You know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotta Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. Today, we are joined by Josh Robbins of the band Late Bloomer, as well as the host of the podcast, Spinning Out. And we've known Josh for a long time. He's a returning guest here. We have guested on his show a couple times now. And just really fun to have Josh back on, especially after 4 years, and he was on in our old format of the show where he didn't really get much of a choice on what we talked about. So
I wish I knew what else. I guess you could probably find the email of what you gave him, the list you gave him to choose from, because the way we had done it when he was on the show was that we would kind of pick a representative album from each decade, from the 70s to now.
Yeah.
And send that to people. So they'd have like 5 records to choose from. And then we, realized that people were like, I don't know what any of this is. And I don't want to do the show. Can we do something else?
Yeah. Once we got so many, can we do something else's? We were like, maybe we need to change this for our guests.
But Josh was game.
Oh, yeah.
When we had him on before. He didn't complain. I think he actively chose something that he didn't think he was going to like.
Yeah. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the year 1983, the album Power, Corruption, and Lies by New Order. A pretty big one.
Yeah, very big record. We have previously covered New Order a couple times, but yeah, I think we've hit the 3 biggest New Order records now.
Have we done? Well, you did it at 86, right?
Yeah, I did Brotherhood on the Dance of Days 1986. Maybe the first episode of that.
Yeah.
And we did Low Life with Jonathan Ford of Unwed Sailor. Very different energies.
Yeah.
Between Josh and Jonathan. Not as many discussions about Diff Juzz.
If you want to hear, we talked at length about Diff Juzz on the previous New Order episode.
We did. That's a fun episode too. Definitely check that one out. And yeah, if you head over to patreon.com/punklotapod for $1, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. Last week, we did a Master Punk Theater on the 1983 film Suburbia, a Penelope Spheris film. And you could also get access to all of our back audio, over 200 pieces of audio out there for you to listen to. So a lot of content for your buck. See how many you can get through in 1 month. And
Challengeography.
The Punk Lotto Patreon.
Please don't listen to us every single day. That can't be good for you.
It's what I do whenever I find a new show that I really love. I listen to every episode, and if I really love the show, I'll join the Patreon and listen to all that. I did that with the POD cast, which was a new metal podcast, and I told them in the Discord, and the host was like, "Oh my God, what? I hope your brain is okay."
We spaced this content out when we're making it. You just mainlined all of new metal history. Just did 40 whippets at once. A lot of inhalant jokes coming up for me lately. That's been a bit.
You're really into jumbos.
I'm not doing inhalants. Just
they're funny because of how short they are. I think that's what's so funny about the idea of being really into whippets.
Yeah, that is a particular kind of high. You want to be high for a very short period of time and not remember any of it. It's not like you trip out and see things. You just black out.
You black out and then wake up a couple minutes later. Oh, yeah. Anyway, you can follow us on all forms of social media at Punk Lotto Pod. We're on all of them under the same name. We're pretty easy to find. So let's get into the show. I hope you all enjoy this conversation we had with Josh Robbins. Talk to you later. We're joined here today with longtime friend of the show, Josh Robbins. Josh, welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome.
After pre-pandemic times, we had you on in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. We had you on back in our old format of the show, too, where it was like a pre-selected list of albums, and we just were like, which one do you want to talk about? And we gave you wound up picking a Stranglers album and a 7 seconds, like, I feel like that was a demo. It was so rough.
Oh yeah, it was like the first 7 seconds, 7-inch probably or something.
Yes. Something.
Did we talk about both on the episode?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that was the format at that point.
Yeah, we did albums and EPs every episode for like until the pandemic. That's when we stopped doing it. I don't know why we were like, we got to talk about 2 things on an episode every. I don't know.
Yeah,
you learn over time.
Was it socially fucked up or was it Skins, Brains, and Guts?
It was socially fucked up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it was like the promo demo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I remember that episode. What's funny about it is I remember that episode, but I don't. It's weird now in this moment. I'm like, I don't remember talking about 7 seconds at all. I just know that I went really hard on that Stranglers album. And it's funny now as someone who has done a lot of episodes of a podcast, and I really try not to show my feelings on a record too much. I break that rule a lot, but it's sort of like I think it would be rude to me if I brought somebody on, and especially with like the format of my podcast, and I feel like I'm kind of cutting ahead to maybe where we were going in the conversation, but it's kind of like if someone wants to talk about Fall Out Boy, and I was just like, I don't like Fall Out Boy, then it's sort of like, why did I bring them on? So it's sort of like, I usually have to find something that I like about the record, but I also think that outwardly that hides my haterness. So someone wants to like go back and listen to the first time I was on, you can hear me in full hater effect on that, and that's probably how I truly am when I don't have a nice guest in my house or their house. I don't know what you would call it in a podcast, but yeah. So I've learned a lot since then. That's what I'm saying.
I feel like we get away a little bit with expressing our true feelings when we don't like something on this show because we kind of have the good cop, bad cop option between with having 2 hosts. It can be like, oh, now I'm the dissenting opinion. I thought it sucked. Yeah. And I hate you for making me listen to it. But there have been moments where we've had people pick a record and we're like, ugh. We both are just like, I don't like this. I can't say very much good about it. Those are tough episodes to record.
Yeah. Yeah. What's weird about it is like, I feel like in the same way that I watch movies a lot of times, I like watching movies that I know I'm not going to like. And I feel like I remembered not liking the Stranglers album. And I don't know how clear that was really. It's sort of like I enjoyed that it was like something that I didn't enjoy. And I also wonder, probably not going to test myself on this, but I wonder if I would like it now, this many years later, where I feel like I'm kind of more open to that style of music than I was. But I think about it and I'm like, I don't know. I feel like that I might just become a hater again if thinking about the Stranglers. So I'm sorry, but I ended up with my last job. I saw so much Strangler stuff, so I thought about it like a lot, where it was just like, damn, and I was like, I kind of made myself an expert, but only in the sense of like hating this band in that moment. And I don't even hate. I feel like I don't even want to keep saying I hate the Stranglers. I didn't like that album. Maybe I could be proven wrong. I'm not sure if I will do that. So this episode now is just me talking about the last episode. So that's always good content.
At this point. Yeah.
Have you do you like any Stranglers stuff?
I haven't gone back. I mean, I think like I should go back and try like that. I have like an aversion to any sort of thing that kind of goes off into like circus music. And I feel like there's like this kind of, I mean, it's like music as a whole, like rock music as a whole loves doing this. But post-punk was so like, oh, let's throw you for a loop kind of thing, like really test you, which I appreciate sometimes as, somebody that has built his life as a contrarian, but it's sort of like when you're actually sitting in it. I think I would love playing in the Stranglers. I just didn't love listening to it, but I should revisit. I don't know if there's maybe if someone can suggest someone listening to this, or either maybe you all have a suggestion that's like, no, this would have been an easier album to listen to for the Stranglers.
I was just curious because that record was my introduction to the Stranglers, and since then I have listened to some of their like earlier, more classic, more important, like 77, 78 records, and I don't like those records either. So I was just curious if you like are like, oh yeah, their early stuff's good. But yeah,
I'm gonna take your word for it then.
The circus music thing that crops up really early in there, and it's definitely like a Doors influence too. And it's like, what if we made the Doors worse? You know, it's like I like parts of this. It's one of those. They're one of those bands. Some of those records, like where they can do the thing where there's things happening concurrently, like at the same time in a song that you love and hate.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like, I really like this riff. I hate what the organ is doing.
Yeah. Organ's a tough one. Organ always wants that. And like,
yeah,
I feel like as much like 70s stuff that I just like spend so much of my time listening to like 70s rock, I really still can't get around to the Doors. Like there's parts where I'm fine with it. And then it goes into those same kind of territories and I'm like, no, I don't want this. He's not singing about anything. I fucking hate the organ. And that's something I haven't come around to. And like, I usually feel like I now have this like mantra where it's like, I don't know, mantra is the right word, but basically I feel like I'm not really sure even what I hate anymore. Like it's, you think about kind of certain things, and there was a long point in my life where I was like, Aerosmith is horrible. And then what I started doing around those kind of, it might have been after this podcast, after I listened to Stranglers, but generally I will, if I think I dislike something, I will kind of make a playlist of all the songs that I do like. And I ended up doing that with Aerosmith, and I had like 30 songs or something. And I was like, I don't think I can say I dislike Aerosmith because it was like essentially the first two albums and then like select tracks going forward. And I was like, no, I guess I really like a lot of Aerosmith. It's just they just kept putting out music, so it's really tough. So yeah, I don't really know. And I did the same thing for like Red Hot Chili Peppers, but I was like, I like too many Red Hot Chili Peppers songs to really truthfully be like, I'm a hater. I get it when people say they hate Red Hot Chili Peppers, but there's so much there that I like. But once again, that's not even the album we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we haven't even said it yet, but you, after being on our show, maybe I probably feel like in the pandemic, you launched your show as well, initially as like an Instagram stories show, which I thought was I was like, oh, that's interesting. Just do a podcast, and then you did. But that's spinning out, and you were gracious enough to have us on and discuss the Minutemen, which we've never done a Minutemen album on this show. Now that I think about it, but we did the best one on yours, so I guess that's. If you want to hear that, go check that out. And then we had. Oh, and then you had Dylan on your show.
Yeah.
Earlier this year. It was this year, right? Yeah.
Yeah, not too long ago. Talk about Dennis Wilson.
Yeah. And I realized we are actually like two firsts, I think, for you. We're the first that you had two people on at once. Mm-hmm. And Dylan's like the first where you had a repeat that wasn't, your wife and co-host, Sarah.
Yeah, she, I feel like, doesn't count in that capacity.
Right.
Yeah, for her. But yeah, definitely the first time I've had even like, I think even like somebody that like another member, like I was thinking about something like, for example, it's like, I've had Pat from Drug Church on, but I've not even had like anyone else from Drug Church or like someone else from Self Defense, which would have made sense. Like you just kind of retitle it. I don't think I've had an instance where it's like someone of another band that's maybe in two bands. Like I don't know. That's kind of like a weird rule where it's like I don't even know why I made that rule, but it just kind of felt like there's so many people in the world. But I don't know. So Dylan, you were a first.
I am
maybe
very
a laugh.
special, very select.
Yeah.
An elite guest.
Yeah.
No, I
It's
just
always-
happened to pick a record that I knew you'd want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, how
It was-
do you feel like you knew that I would want to talk about it?
I've seen you mention that record before.
Okay. Yeah, I feel
Or
like
you
I
were-
probably do mention it a lot.
Maybe I posted something about it and you responded to me. I was like, oh, a fellow fan of that record. Haven't
Yeah.
encountered very many.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
love
I
that
think
record. So
I think we've probably, it's like now I'll start talking about that record, and probably it's just better off listening to us talk about it the first time on that episode. But yeah, it's always been, it was such like a hidden gem. So in this instance, like the people that listen to you, if you've never listened to Dennis Wilson's solo album, maybe you all have talked about this on here, go do that because it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I'll see like the type of people you get on. I'll see like names of like, wow, that's so cool. He got them, and I'm like, why didn't I think to ask anybody? Like that's been like wow, I wish I could get them. It's like, well, you could if you would have asked. I mean, they probably would have done it because
that's been like a weird thing where I feel like there, especially more when we were in the pandemic, it's a little harder now.
Yeah.
But there was a point where even with the Instagram thing, because before it was called Spinning Out, there was like this other little thing I was doing on the Late Bloomer Instagram where it was just like just right into 2020, like maybe like a few weeks in. I don't think there were no rules in the world. It was just like purge, except like it was the internet. And it was basically like, it was like, hey, will you want to talk to me at like 8 a.m. about like anything? That's what it felt like. And then it was like Ben Lee came on to it. And in that, I remember he was like, I got to go now. like there, but it was like, you could just talk to people that had no business. You had no business setting up, and they were just so bored that they were like, yeah. And that lasted for a good while. And I feel like that sort of like that patience has died down. But it is funny sometimes, like the types of people that you can ask to be on your podcast. And if you just simply ask them, some people don't say no, or, they'll say yes initially and then kind of come to and be like, what the fuck? And then kind of ghost you, which is fair because I'm like, yeah, you had no business ever entertaining this. But that, yeah, so it's less of a chance now.
Yeah. I mean, but in all reality, if you want to start a podcast and like you want to interview people, just ask them, because I'd say your chances are higher than 50-50 to get a yes on most people. More than likely, if you don't get a yes, you'll get nothing, like a no response, like a no read. Like that's usually like the worst case. Very rarely is it somebody being like no. Though we did ask, we have asked a couple who were like, we don't do podcasts anymore or something like that. I was like, oh, something went wrong on one, I guess. But
yeah,
we have had maybe 2 guests cancel last minute.
Yeah,
I think just because of life, and
they
we
came to
didn't wind up rescheduling them because of whatever.
Yeah. For like example, in like 2020, streaming concerts were like a thing, and they were all like benefits and stuff. There was a point where I remember, because I was looking up anyone who had played Milestone, and it hit up Mike Patton, and and then Mike Patton responded, and then he was like, or either someone that works for him. But somehow it was worded in a way that I was like, I think I'm actually talking to Mike Patton. And Mike Patton was like, well, I don't really like play an instrument like that in a way that I could do a solo set. And I was like, makes sense, because Mike Patton's always kind of been a part of things. And it's like, I don't even really know if Mike Patton plays an instrument. It just feels like he probably plays every instrument or none. Like I don't know if there's like, so it's weird to think like, but it was like, Mike Patton had no business messaging me back. Like he's got to have better things to do. But in 2020, he definitely had no better thing to do than to message me back. Yeah, on Facebook.
The era of the online streaming concert performance thing, it died very quickly once people could go to real shows again.
Yeah. It felt like the end of high school. We were like, we're gonna keep being friends, right? And it's like, there's no chance that we will continue being friends, guy. It was people were like, we're gonna still do streaming concerts. Like this, like open up a world for like people that can't go. And I was in agreement. I was like, yeah, there's so many people that probably immunocompromised or just like people that can't really just probably can't really leave their homes or whatever, agoraphobia. But it was like everybody was like, nah, fuck that, just like it just didn't really live. And I was like, oh, I kind of thought we were gonna live in a world that it was like every show had a camera in the back or something, but it didn't happen. I don't know. So,
whoa, we got to sync audio with video. Ew.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah.
It was too hard to keep doing.
Yeah.
So I guess we've brought up the pandemic a couple times, and it kind of leads a little bit into your band Late Bloomer, whereas the last record you put out, it was in 2018.
Yeah.
And then you just this year, March, I want to say, or February, you released your first album in 6 years?
Yes, 6 years. It was, I mean, a lot of I guess all the stuff that we're talking about, it was like, I felt like we had written so much of it, almost like it felt like, and this probably isn't 100% the case, but I felt like we had the bones of some of the songs in like 2019. And it was like, we're gonna put out a new record in 2020. And then essentially just didn't see each other for like a few months. And then by the time we came back, it just kind of felt like fits and starts. And it was like, what were we playing on these songs? And then it just kind of felt like it took us like a couple years to like relearn or rewrite and all that stuff. Conversations I think other people have had. But on top of that, too, it was just like there was a point in 2020 where I remember I was booking a European tour, like self-booking, which was like crazy. And it was so like basically 2019 into early 2020, I was booking this European tour because we had Late Bloomer and All Right both had these like two festivals. But it was like we had a festival in the UK and then we had a festival in Germany, and then essentially like 2.5 weeks between. And so I had to essentially book 2.5 weeks in between. And it's like so much of it was like it would get booked and it'd fall apart. And then like it was just the most stressful thing that I had ever like taken on, because it was like there's so many components to like booking a European tour that were like not supposed to be like, you're not really supposed to DIY book a European tour like that. I've talked to so many people and they're like, yeah, that used to be the case when like our crust bands would go over, but like it's kind of like it's almost like a union thing now where it's like this booking person will only talk to this venue person and they kind of have an agreement. And so there were times where it was like, who are you? And it was just like a very hard thing. So after all of that, and then like when COVID hit, I was like actually like kind of happy because I was like, and I wasn't sure at first that the tour wasn't going to happen because it was like, but it was definitely like screwing it up so much that I was like, I don't think this tour is going to happen. But some of it started getting salvaged by, I think it was like a booking person in like, not Belgium. I'm sorry, I forget it, but he probably won't listen to this, so it doesn't matter. But basically, he was the Netherlands. It doesn't matter. But basically, he was like salvaging so much of like the tour, and it was like actually probably going to come together. But it was still like just like held together by duct tape. And I think I was going to have to drive that tour. So we were going to have to pick up a car in like the Netherlands so that the steering wheel would be on the right side. And I could be wrong about all of these details because I've never been to Europe. And like basically we were going to take it from Amsterdam into the UK, which isn't that far of a drive because everything's like 4 hours or so. It's not that far. And I was going to drive that into the UK so that I didn't have to drive with the steering wheel on the other side. And we were going to drive ourselves. And so all that to say, like after that happened, I just like was extremely burnt out, like to a crazy degree that I don't feel like I really recovered from until we recorded this record. Like it's almost like I didn't even want to record a record. We just kept getting closer and closer. And then eventually when we were done recording it, I was like, oh, I do want to play music again. And that was like 2023 or something. So yeah, then I released a record and I am now well again. So that's my long journey with it that you didn't ask for.
The name of the record is called Another One Again, in case anyone is curious. And I say this as someone, I've heard all of your records. I've seen Late Bloomer live a couple times. I'm trying to think how many times, maybe at least 3 or 4 times, maybe more based on just we're always at the same shows?
We keep track. We have a tally.
There's a tally.
Yeah. It's
see.
4. Yeah.
It could be 4.
He's a little behind. He needs to renew his membership. And
yeah. You get ice cream when you hit 5.
We had Scott from Totally Slow on, and one of the things I brought up in that episode was like, we know all the same people. I've been at shows or festivals you were playing, and I've yet to see Totally Slow live. I still haven't seen Totally Slow live. Don't know why that hasn't happened, but
it seems personal at this point.
That's what he said.
I figured he'd say that.
I mean, you took the opportunity to tell him, I've never seen your band before.
Yeah, there was this time and this other time, and then unavoidable instances, but I really have not done it. But you have watched my band, so I do have that over Scott Hicks.
I actually booked your band to play in Hickory at a coffee shop that wound up hating us and like not letting us book shows there anymore because we weren't bringing any actual money into the coffee shop.
No, of course not. We were doing hardcore shows in a drive-through coffee shop.
Yeah.
Nobody was buying Americanos
at like 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah. And I also feel like I charged your wife to get in because I don't think I'd met her yet. I don't think I'd met you personally either.
I think that would have probably been the first time, like directly, not like through Grant or something like that, like through people. So yeah.
Like I saw Meth Mountain before I ever like talked to you. So like, and then probably saw you at like Lunchbox or something. You doing the door for like a Graph Orlock show or something like that. And
yeah.
So all this to say, like, this is your best record yet, I think. And I don't know if you've gotten that kind of feedback at all or if how people have reacted to it. But I listened to this record and I was like, all of your songwriting has just like elevated to this, like, I don't know, maybe it's just the time you took between like records. That it's just, this is my favorite record you guys have done. And it's I guess it's rare to say like somebody's 4th LP is like their best, but like it's a phenomenal record. I highly recommend everybody check it out. One of the best of 2024 so far. But have you, after all this time, and you said you're ready to play shows again after finishing the record, but like after all this time, how does it feel to you as like the creator of this music? Was this something that you were like, wow, this is incredible, or were you like just happy to get them all out and done or whatever?
There was an instance when, because I felt like in a way like it's like some of the kind of sleepwalking through the past few years wasn't like I feel like it's like I got this job that I put a lot of myself into, and it was kind of like that's where a lot of that creative space went into. And so we were kind of like, we had so much songs and other stuff that we were sifting through that when we got to that recording process, I felt like we had written good songs, but there was a moment, because I feel like it's like a step back on the thing I'm already talking about. So it's like we recorded in a studio as we normally do, but I feel like a lot of times in our approach in the studio was just like, I feel like with coming from like punk and whatever kind of music we play, it was just always like you have X amount of days to record, and for us it was like 3. Like we always put this like tight deadline, and mainly I'm talking about because we didn't have any money. But even like when we had more money that we could do a couple days, it was just like, we have to record this record in like 3 or 4 days. And then when that process was done, every single time was just like, well, that's our record, and you try and like mix it or master, the things out of it, or cut some songs out if they didn't, they didn't turn out so great. But we never like went into the studio with the situation of like, maybe when we're done with the studio, we're not actually done with the record. Which is probably something that a lot of people nowadays learn on their first record, but it's taken us this long. But also I think like technology kind of caught up with at least us. And I think like 2020 helped in the sense of like, with doing demos, we had to get like equipment. And so we had all this recording equipment in our house, and like we were able to do it outside of like, so we did everything in the studio that was like drums, bass, and guitar. But any kind of overdubs in terms of like backing vocals or like even like another lead, we just kind of put every sort of like first thing, like lead or the main vocal we did in the studio, but we did like all the harmonies at home and then sent it away. So essentially, if you're able to and you have access to that technology, you can record a record for like, it's still expensive, but like, I don't know, $3,000, and then you then basically make a $10,000 record or something because of how much other time you put into it. So all that to say, like, by the time we were done with that part of it and we got mixes back, I remember hearing the song Mother Mary, and I felt like in the first time it was what I heard in my head. And I don't say that as someone like that makes me sound like I have like orchestras in my head or something, like, you know, but it was sort of like that song specifically. I always had a thought of what it could be, and that never happens to me. And it was like when I heard it, because I was like, no, I want to have this on there, and I want to have like backing vocals. I want to make sure it like swells and stuff like that, because I was like, the song doesn't work if it doesn't do that. And I heard it in like, and it sounds so egotistical, but I feel like I like kind of cried for a second, not too long, but like I cried, and I was like, holy shit, like, because it was just like you can actually shoot for something and land it, and I'm kind of just answering the question of like, yes. So on the fourth record, I feel like I finally figured out like how to make a record, and it's just the ingredient for me is time. But I feel like that being able to hear it back like I thought I could ever hear it in my head meant so much. So even after all this time, the 6 records in between, and we've been sitting on some of these songs, I feel like I still enjoy playing these songs after that whole process. And it feels like a record that people are finding organically, because we didn't have like big budgets in terms of marketing and all that stuff. And like, it was just kind of self-released, and with the help of Mike from Dead Broke Records, so smaller kind of labels involved. I actually feel like people were like, oh, I'm actually discovering this. So whatever kind of small metric that is for my band, it's just like, it does feel like people are like coming around to it in a positive way. And that's nice, you know? So yeah, people have been nice about it, you know?
That's good. It's a good record. Yeah. Really, really enjoyed it.
No, yeah, definitely everyone should check it out. I'll play a song in the episode. You've already heard the song by this point, just to, you know, so people can hear it. But yeah, excellent record, excellent podcast. What else we got? Record label, Self-Aware Records. Go check all that stuff out. You're doing like a singles series sort of thing.
Yeah. It's so with kind of like the getting, I guess, back on the horse kind of thing, like, one of the hard things is just like kind of convincing myself that if I actually just like sit there and write a song, something will come out. And it is just like taking me a couple years to really like give myself that space. And, you know, a podcast also takes up a lot of your time. So that is taking up a lot of space that writing music, usually I had some time too. So I kind of have to blame my podcast for making it where I can't write as much. But I think in the peak, even 2021 time frame that, you know, I was starting and doing the podcast, I feel like I needed it because I was not feeling creative at all. And somehow I think the conversations have kind of led me to. But so it's kind of helped with All Right, my other band. I just feel like I want to write again. So with that said, we decided to just like put out, I don't know, 2 songs every month for 2024. And it's really hard. And I kind of like already regret trying to make that promise to myself, because it's really hard. But it also demystifies the writing process, and also like helps you get away with just like actually doing it. And like we've joked about, maybe even on the podcast, or, you know, I feel like it's not my original idea. So there's a, you know, it's like my friend Puri Matty, they and their partner Sam, they were doing a podcast about, it's called Too Much TV. And on that, every week they had to write a song, and that was every week. And so they would watch an episode of television, then write a song about that episode of television. So, you know, and then fast forward a couple years in, you know, it was kind of like, well, what if we did something like that, minus the podcast thing already added to it? I guess we already had that. Just kind of, it's helped me be like, you can just write a song. Maybe it won't turn out that great. And there's been stuff that we've already released like that I was like, I don't even know. And people have been like, that's a great song. And it's kind of a bummer because it's kind of like, like I want people to listen to every project, but it is funny when you're like, I think that might be garbage. And then people are like, this song rocks. And you're like, all right. I don't really know. But, it's been funny kind of like hearing people, kind of like, oh, but also the thing is like also not really caring if it even gets discovered. It's just like, just do it for the sake of doing it. Because the whole reason I've ever played music was theoretically because I like writing songs. So it shouldn't matter about all the other shit, so that's the point of the project really. It's just kind of like wading through it and actually doing it.
I was trying to remember all the ones you've done so far. So there's boys sets, the raccoons, and is Typey the third one so far, or is that someone?
So Typey is so I guess technically what we were counting. So yeah, boy sets, the raccoons. And then Late Bloomer, since that came out March 1st, they were counting that as a month.
You don't have to do one that month.
Yeah, Sarah is featured on backing vocals for that. So we were counting that because it's like, I did a whole album. That's got to count. And then, but yeah, even with that, we kind of hit March anyways because Sarah started doing her solo stuff under the name Typey. And it was kind of songs that never completely fit with All Right. And it's like, really even more just the voice of like her own thing. And then kind of depending on when this comes out, but it's not like a big marketing push, but I have solo stuff in the month after that. So for May, it's like solely things I've written without the help of other people is kind of the point. And then so on and so forth as we continue through the year. Other kind of ideas that hopefully we can pull off because some are going to be a lot harder to do when you get into things that you can't really do at home. So we'll kind of see, but we have a lot of it mapped out, so it'll be interesting. We've joked. Someone has said that I have to do like a rap month, and I don't know if that's going to happen at all. But we'll see. We'll see. The year is long.
It's a really fun idea,
Josh, and I'm here to say, maybe I'll collab with that one on you.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, definitely send me some ideas. The hard thing has been kind of like since rap is so much vibe. I was like, what vibe do I want? Because it was like, and I feel like I was like, I maybe could do like a early Ice-T, but then it's like, so much of it is like your voice has to sound good.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I can beat that hurdle. Like, it's like, I've never tried to rap and it's more terrifying than anything I've ever done, which makes me want to try and do it. But I think if I do it, I will never let anyone hear it. Because I think it'll be bad to a level that I can't even be like, no, I have to go through with this. But if you see it and just like give it a like, if for some reason I release like a rap EP later this year, be kind. I understand. We'll see. I don't know if that'll actually happen.
You got to give yourself something easy to do too. Like just do some like simple like loops and do like a little like techno beat thing or like an ambient thing just to give yourself a little lead time to be like, I gotta write a song. Well, I can also crank out this on like a little tiny ambient tune. See if anybody
like
cares
a
about
Brian
that.
Eno month.
Yeah.
It's just be a fan, just like a fan throughout the night. It'll just be 10 hours of like noise machine. Yeah.
You could always try to do like a Dee Ramone rap album kind of pastiche.
Honestly, that's more along the lines of
lower quality of it. Just it's supposed to be bad.
You're 100% speaking my language because I was like, there's no way I can credibly do it. But if I can sort of nail that era, like it's been like I actually was re-listening to what D.D. King, is that the name of it?
Yeah.
D.D. King EP, and also I bought this LL Cool J tape to kind of see if there was somewhere in between, because it's like I know I'm not gonna be able to do LL Cool J, but maybe if I can even get D.D. King level. And I think a big part of it, if I do D.D. King, is it's not really about the music. I have to also be able to buy all of like the gear, to like dress like I'm in Run DMC, because I got to take a picture. I feel like that's like
Oh yeah.
50% of it is the aesthetic. And if I can buy the clothes, I might be able to write the lyrics. So I got to buy the clothes first. So I got to look for that. And it's hard. So I don't want to say that clothes is all of it, but if you don't have the right clothes and the right voice, you're going to have a hard time with the actual music part of it.
You're speaking my language. You're really describing my writing process of like, how am I going to dress when I play this song? That's really, really important.
Yeah.
How's it going to
really
look?
True. Yeah.
Yeah, Dylan's been like designing artwork for like music that he's never released for decades now at this point.
Well, that's a hard thing with like because like, since I've already revealed it, my solo stuff coming out, I've been sitting on these songs for a little bit. And the hardest thing now that it's like ready to be mixed is just like, what am I supposed to wear on the cover of this EP, which I wanted to be a picture of me. And that's so hard because it's never like all sits on me, which is kind of the point of why I wanted to do it that way, because those solo albums of like, it feels like a faux pas to be a guy just holding his guitar on the cover, but I wanted to, I'm revealing so much about the process that I'm going through. It's just like, I want it to be a cover of me holding the guitar because I think that's such a bad idea that's the best idea, I think, for something like this. So I don't know.
You need bleeding cowboy font on the cover somewhere. I do love an album cover where it's just like, somebody just took a photo of that person and
that's
like,
what
put it on the cover.
But it's so hard to do it. Like even like, I mean, with any of that stuff, it's just like the vibe has to be right, But luckily we do have things like filters now, so I can just slap a filter on it, and hopefully it won't look half as goofy. And you can also just kind of, if you look at artwork from like Motown and Stax, there's so many things where it's like, if I just put this border over the stupid picture of me, I think that'll do so much heavy lifting of it, Yeah.
You can always try like a Springsteen Lucky Town kind of design for the cover. Just get the worst picture of you possible.
Ooh,
and then just put really stretched out like embossed letters.
Yeah. I'm looking at this cover now. Oh god, that one, man. I feel like I think it was Stephen Hayden was talking about, that's like a good so that's the one that came out the same day as Human Touch, which I believe also has kind of bad art. Oh yeah, it's kind of it's a little better.
It's a good picture, but it's terrible, like bad design.
Well, he was really going through like a Dylan phase at that point or something. Like it feels like it's like you can't also become Dylan if you're Bruce Springsteen. Like it just feels like a little too on the nose, like it feels like he was going through his Dylan Christian phase on that album cover.
It's the LA like non-E Street members. It's the LA session musicians kind of records that he did. Yeah, they're better than their reputation. I'll say that.
Yeah, I've heard that. I need to revisit. And also, I don't think I should be talking shit on Bruce Springsteen right now when Little Steven put us on a playlist.
Nice.
Yeah. Wow. So Little Steven, I watched your show where you're in I'm Gonna Fuck Up the Country, and he's gonna kick us off the playlist, but he had some show on Netflix.
Lilyhammer.
Yes. Okay. I did watch the show. So, but I watched it and I feel like I enjoyed it. And then people then had articles about how shitty it was. And I was like, but I liked it. That's like a weird thing with my taste where it's just like, you watch something and then people growing, like, I feel like I'll watch a movie as a little kid. I mean, this happens with every little kid, but then years later, people were like, do you remember that piece of shit? And you were like, yeah, that was my favorite movie growing up. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, yeah. The Watcher by Dean Koontz, the movie version of it, was my favorite movie growing up. I don't know what you're talking about, but I remember really liking Lilyhammer, and I feel like it got scrubbed from Netflix for
It was like one of the first Netflix originals too, like one of the very first ones. It was like that. Wasn't there like Rockmere? Was that the name of that show or something like that? Like a Western sort of thing? Yeah, it was funny.
There was some werewolf show that I watched. And I think it also got scrubbed, but I'm also blanking on the title of it because that's not what I did my research for.
Is that the show Moonlight? I don't know. My wife watched like a werewolf vampire show at one point, and it was called that.
No, we'll find the name of it at some point. But
Hemlock Grove?
Sorry, say it again.
Was it Hemlock Grove? Was
Yes,
that a werewolf?
Yeah, Hemlock. There was like some hints to werewolf, and then I think the show got canceled before they revealed somebody was something else. I don't know. It was kind of going into everything. And I watched that, and then it wasn't a Netflix show, but there was some show about like people that in a Colorado town that end up like going underground or something. It's just funny to think of these shows that you get really invested in, and then they just don't get renewed, and then you're just like, well, I guess fuck me then. Like Carnival did that, but for a different reason. Like it was like on for like 3 seasons, and then it just had a cliffhanger, and that show was great, and they were like, we're gonna give you a Carnival movie, and then they never did. And then I feel like the creator was like, no, that was like the ending, and you're like, no, you're just fucking lying to us. Like
you're just telling us that.
Yeah.
Like I was one of those people who like held on forever for like The Riches to come back, like that the Eddie Izzard like FX show. Like I was like, maybe they'll come back, and it was like years later. It's like those children are adults now. Like they're not bringing the show back.
Yeah. Children always ruin every TV show idea. Like I feel like it's like I've been watching Resident Alien. And I think that show is really funny, but it's very hard because that show is supposed to be like almost like the next day, the next season, but the kid is like so much bigger.
Yeah.
And you're like, you shouldn't be allowed to have children in TV shows. That's what I'm saying. That's my platform.
That's why all like those WB and CW shows had like 30-year-olds playing high schoolers, because they stayed the same from season to season.
Yeah. Yeah. But well, didn't they on One Tree Hill? I think they worked in like a time jump. You do the Mad Men move where you're just like, and it's a year later because it was a year between seasons. Which is what they should do, but I guess, which I don't know why they just don't do that. Like it's sort of like, I can understand that I get it. It's like, how much would the story have changed? Or just like, give me I think some people are smarter about this now, but like, give me a montage. I don't know, to explain a year has passed. Like, show me when Kennedy got assassinated or something, so I understand time has passed. Like it's not that hard.
Here's the newspaper with the date.
Yeah. Well, we've talked for 45 minutes and we have not even come close to the album that we're going to talk about today. So the premise of the show is we sign our guests a year and they choose one punk adjacent album from the year for us to discuss. And so I like to take the temperature of our guests. I like to say, hey, what era are you most interested in? Because I don't want to give somebody like, all right, we gave you the year 1977, and they're like, I don't know any of this stuff. I don't know any of it. So that I like to at least be like, what's your range? What's your taste into? And I figure with you probably take any decade, just because you're already doing a show where you're covering all sorts of time periods of music. So, but you initially said 80s, and I was like, well, people don't always say the 80s when we have them on. So I gave you the year 1983. Mm-hmm. And before we get to the record that you did select for us to talk about, you actually sent quite a few possibilities or some other albums that you were considering. So what are some of those for you?
You have me on this. Oh, I just had the email pulled up. I was about to say you got me on the spot, but it's right there. So some of the picks that I had, I felt like I wasn't sure about doing New Order because it just seemed too easy. And I know I just revealed it, but I guess if you clicked on this, it revealed it anyways. But so REM, Murmur came out that year, I believe. And Scream, I really like that. I didn't write down any album titles, so I feel like I'm going to be really bad about that. But it's like their one album, and Still Screaming, I believe. And Subhumans put out The Day the Country Died that year. I like that one, but that's not my favorite Subhumans record. I feel like that's the problem I was running into. I liked a lot of bands that put out records in 83, but that album wasn't my favorite album by them, because if it had been, I would have 100% picked the Blasters, but that specific Blasters record is like not my favorite Blasters record. But going through the list still is Gary Newman, Big Boys, Aggression, Dump Truck, and Talking Heads were another one. Yeah.
Dylan and I run into that all the time whenever it's just the two of us and one of us picks the record. We go through like these lists and we're like, I like this band, but it's not that record. That's not the record I want to like, break the seal on,
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't want to go back to the same artists too often, or at least not too close to each other. Because there's definitely artists where you can probably talk about multiple records, but it's like it might be 2 or 3 years that I get to come back if we're doing the show 3 years from now, which as long as we've been doing it, I don't know. I would say
you might as well at this point.
We probably will be. But it's just like, do I want to do this artist on their third record that's good, but like maybe doesn't have a story? Or should I pick something that has a story or has like that status of being the one? Which I take it that you decided to go with a record that has that status.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I felt like I was having the moment that, and it's funny, I felt like I should be more equipped for it. Like I always tell people, pick 3 records and then we'll trim it down to 1, because usually if someone just sends me 1, then I'm like, no, we already did, that artist, I don't want to do them again. So if you pick 3, then also if you pick 3, then if you kind of had 1 and I don't like 2, then I can pick 1 of the 3. But with sending you so many, I was like, damn, this is obviously really hard to like pick a favorite, and so having to pick something through that year, and I was like, it felt like I was like 20 pages into the 1983 list. And then it was like, it also just kind of felt like I was like trying too hard, like in a way, like it was like, I love that Aggression record, but I also love it in a sense that I've listened to it like maybe 5 times in my life. And that may be putting it more times than I really have. And so it's kind of just like, it's just like there are moments where I feel like on Spinning Out, people will pick a record and I have to kind of like almost test them like, hey, do you feel comfortable talking about this for an hour? And they're like, actually, no, because I feel like it's sort of it's an inclination when we're almost trying to impress somebody, even if we're not thinking that we're doing that we pick a record that, it's like, there's no possible way I could talk about that Aggression record for any given length of time, or even like Big Boys, a band that I like, but it's like, is it that Big Boys record? Or Dump Truck I love a lot, but like almost any Dump Truck record, I'm not sure how much there is to talk about, which is kind of sad because I think they're a really underrated band, but it just once again kind of feels like you're like trying too hard to pick something. So then I was like, I'm going to go the other way and pick New Order,
It's funny because like when you were sending me like your list and you were like, but also like this too. And I was like, you host a podcast. You know what this is like. You're doing the exact same thing.
I'm doing the same fucking thing. Yeah.
I think it's because when you're given the option, you're just like, well, I could do this. I could. The options.
Yeah,
are
there's like
limitless.
3 emails after that where I'm just like, I'm not sure. Yeah. So yeah, I understand that. It was like every email that I sent, I was just like, I know this is so annoying to do.
But we'll do it. We'll do it too, where we go 20 pages and we're like,
yeah.
Well, I've talked to myself in circles, and I should just go with the first thing that I saw.
Right.
That looked interesting.
New Order was the first thing I wrote in that first email on the response back, because I feel like it's like, I don't know how much the world really feels this now. And I feel like I'm finally edging to talk about it, getting into talking about New Order. There was a point when I was younger where it didn't seem cool to like New Order amongst my friends. And it felt like everyone that I knew were like, no, Joy Division is better than New Order. And that tended to be the conversation. And then eventually it was just like, I went rogue and I put every New Order record on I think I was like on tour with Just Die, a band that we both know. Oh, and David, the drummer, Dave was like, no, New Order's really good. Like, and we were like listening to him and I was just like, holy shit, this is like really good. And so I think at that point, that was probably like 2011. And I was like, wow, people have just been lying to me, just like, don't listen to New Order. That's like, I don't even know what the argument was. It's just Joy Division better. I don't even know if anyone ever told me that. It might have just been something I made up in my head. Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely a thing, because I feel like when Dylan and I have ever talked about New Order in the past, we always do and New Order's actually better than Joy Division, like thing that like we're saying something profound or new.
Yeah.
But it's like,
But that's been the reputation for how long, right? And that Joy Division is the. I mean, and I think I guess I haven't encountered it in my lifetime. I haven't encountered it presented as though, oh, Joy Division is the better band, New Order's a bad band. New Order was like they sold out. Like I think that's something that goes back to the time period where there was maybe like a true punk kind of attitude of, oh, New Order, that's dance music. Oh, that's sellout music. Like, Ian Curtis was a great vocalist and one of the most important writers. And I think that has somewhat transformed into like the tragedy of Ian's life being cut short and like him as a singular figure within that band.
Yeah.
Like that legacy has kind of like transcended it. And it's like, well, now it's like Joy Division without Ian. And that's not at all what New Order is. Like they're so different, even though it's, some of the same people, but they're different writers. I mean, they're just at different points in their lives too. Like, and I don't know. So I think it's just the status of Joy Division as a band. But I also feel like I never had a Joy Division phase, and I didn't really like get into them at the point in your life where you're supposed to.
Yeah.
So for me, like finding New Order, and again, like not even really finding New Order at like a particularly young age, like mid-late 20s, to where I like really started listening to them and being like, oh, this is great. This is fun.
Yeah.
Let's intro the album. So I gave you 1983 and you selected Power, Corruption, and Lies by New Order. Stats on the band. They formed in 1980 and they're from Manchester, England. This was released May 2nd, 1983 on Factory Records, and this is the band's second full-length album. The personnel on this record is Bernard Sumner on vocals, guitar, melodica, synths, and programming, Peter Hook on the 4 and 6-string bass, as well as electronic percussion, Stephen Morris on drums, synths, and programming, and Gillian Gilbert on synths, guitars, and programming. And the record was produced by the band. So yeah, everybody kind of knows the New Order story. They formed out of the ashes of Joy Division after Ian's passing. And so you're right. Like the story into this band was it's New Order. It's Joy Division without Ian. So like, what is this band going to be? And for the first record, Movement, they kind of like kept it to basics. They basically like tried to continue on the sound of Joy Division for that band, and working with the producer on that record, they basically learned how to produce their own albums out of it. And so that's what they did going forward. Martin Hannett, is the producer on Movement. And the band decided, the band went on tour or a trip to New York in 1981. That's where they started to get into like post-disco, freestyle, and like electro music. They also apparently listened to a lot of Italian disco to like put themselves in like a better mood and cheer up. And this record is the band really being influenced by Kraftwerk and Giorgio Moroder. And the loose story behind it is they got synthesizers 2 weeks before going to the studio. They didn't know how to play them. They just figured it out in the studio. And then they finished the record in like 6 weeks and then went on tour right away. And they didn't know how to write these songs either. So it was like one of those things where like they're learning how to do everything with this album and with these songs. And by doing that, they basically created an entire unique and different sound from Joy Division that they stuck with going forward. They experiment with other sounds, of course, later, but the classic era of New Order is Technique. Like that's kind of like the classic era. And even Technique is like also like doing more like club music.
Yeah, definitely up until like Brotherhood. Like Technique and Republic, I feel like go more into like dance stuff, which would have made more sense into like 89 and then 93 Republic. I feel like usually my cutoff for them is Brotherhood, which I think has some really good songs, and maybe I need to revisit that because I still feel like that's kind of the latent kind of like punk thing of we don't listen to dance music like that, which I feel like is like troubling and kind of like problematic as like a kid. There's so much like loaded up in there, but it sort of like just kind of seems that thing that we were kind of told. But yeah, back to this record, I guess the comment I was going to make is they all have names like they're the Rescuers. Like like it's Bernard. I think the one mouse is named Bernard. And the one who is the voice of that one? He's like the American, right? Not Dick Van Dyke. It's not Bob Hope, but the other guy. Another old man. But now we talk about the Rescuers for an hour. So
Rescuers Down Under is the forgotten Disney Renaissance film that no one ever talks about.
Bob Newhart is who I was thinking.
Newhart.
Yeah. And Ava Gabor is Bianca.
Yeah.
Bianca and Bernard. Who, yeah. So, but I love the Rescuers and I love New Order as well. Yeah.
Usually the first thing I ask is what made you choose this album for us to talk about?
I feel like it's no one really told me to. It might have been even Dave, like, oh, you should check out Movement, because I feel like I was like trying to kind of redefine, like get away from it, but I feel like this was like a gateway album into getting into more like dance oriented stuff and like dark wave and kind of really shedding that kind of like punks don't dance kind of thing, which I haven't like fully embraced, but it's like I love music like this and just like, but yeah, it's just like definitely was like a gateway to liking so much other stuff that I for some reason can't name. So I'll just start saying jazz musicians. It feels like those things where people are like, what's your favorite jazz musician? And you're like, so now I can't tell you like any other sort of like bands like this that I also like. So poser alert. But yeah, it's just, I've just loved this record and I listened to it a lot, even though I tend to probably listen to their later records more now. But I did want to like revisit it because I feel like this was such an important kind of transition in my music taste.
We have previously covered New Order. We did the album Low Life with Jonathan Ford of the band Unwed Sailor. And if you listen to Unwed Sailor, you could tell he's a very big Peter Hook fan. And then I did Brotherhood on like the like 1986 series that I do, where I pick like a couple albums from the year 1986 and talk about it. So like we've discussed some New Order in the past before. So I guess a brief. Usually I ask Dylan like, what's your history with New Order? But we may have kind of covered that before. But just give a quick little overview, Dylan, of like what your personal New Order history is.
I don't see if we've talked about it before. I should probably go listen to it because maybe I remembered then where my starting point or my interest in New Order was. or began. But like when I think about it, more than likely I'm fairly certain Power Corruption Lies is the first record that I listened to and by them. And I think it was just one of those cases of having seen the album cover a lot and just doing it's what we do with this show. Just my whole like creating systems to pick music from, which I have kind of like realized in recent years is like not actually helping with my decision fatigue or whatever. What is that called? Decision paralysis.
Yeah,
It really, using this system, like it was like, oh, this makes things easier. But then like I've realized like that I can't go outside of the system anymore, which is something I'm like, it's like, no, sometimes you gotta break the system. But in creating those systems, New Order kind of came up, and it's like, this is a well-regarded record, and it just, I feel dumb when I'm like, hey, have you guys heard Power, Corruption, and Lies? Because it's like, yeah, everybody has. You were like 27 the first time you heard it. Like,
yeah.
What's your problem? But I remember the most distinct memories I have of listening to this record really early on was living in Phoenix. And living in Phoenix was a time period that I guess I felt a lot of isolation because it was just such a massive move away from North Carolina and away from family and friends. And like, it was also just a time period of like really struggling to find a job that I felt like remotely comfortable in and struggling to find musicians to play with. And so I was listening to one of the most distinct memories I have early on of listening to this record was probably leaving. I had found a drummer in like the northwest side of Phoenix, and I ended up playing with him for like a year and a half, almost 2 years off and on. I mean, we slowed down at different times and stopped entirely when COVID happened, but we could never find a bass player. And I remember listening to this record driving away from his house at night in Phoenix. And it was just kind of this like, the Phoenix area is, I mean, they call it a valley. It's a huge valley. It's a big, gigantic, flat space, which is so different from what I think of a valley is. Maybe it's the letter V in the word valley. I really think that it's like, should be just a V with, but it's the slopes of a mountain, huge, giant, flat space for miles and miles and miles, and then mountains on the other side that go straight up. So there's really just kind of like a ring of mountains. And where he lived was kind of out towards the air base, and it was lots of open space, and you could see the mountains in the distance. And it was like, I guess twilighty or early. It was probably later. It would have been later than that, but at night, and it's just like you can kind of see the faint outline of the mountains in the distance, and just like how eerie the desert is, even in like the suburbs of the desert can be. And this record, me listening to this record, and there's just like, wow, like wacky bass synths, and I'm like, this is so fucking cool.
Yeah. If you're in the kind of like right space for it, like as this record progresses, like definitely, because I feel like it starts out with like a really big banger that everyone knows. But the interesting thing, like when it gets into track 2 and through a lot of this record, like it feels like it's almost like testing you in a way, like maybe that's, like it's not all bangers, like in the sense of like people, I feel like people do this thing now where they're like, every song should be a single, every song should be under 3 minutes long, which is something I talk about like every episode of Spinning Out. And I feel like I very much disagree with it, because I think there's different instances in which you need to be receiving music. And sometimes it's not when you're like trying to find a 3-minute single, so like even like track 2, like being We All Stand, like I feel like it's just these things that are really good for that actual moment that you just painted. Like it's late night, you're driving from your friend's house, and you're just in a vibe, and you need something like let you get a vibe. And so much of this record is that, more than I think people kind of like remember about it, even if they think they're a fan, because I feel like we all think of Age of Consent, but a lot of this record is not that.
Yeah. Probably most of the record isn't.
Yeah, most of the record really is not that, and it's just kind of like if it's a club hit, it's like it feels like closing time kind of music. Like it's like the big kind of club bangers have already gone on, and these are like closing the night out. You're like trying to figure out, did your friends leave? I don't know. I've never really gone to clubs, so I'm not going to be able to paint the picture, but I assume you're like just like pretty drunk or on other substances, but you're on the come down is what it feels like a lot of this record is.
Yeah, it's dark, it's kind of scary, but you just had fun. Yeah, those are definitely moods to describe the record. And I love what you say about like the people's everything needs to be a banger, everything needs to be a single. Like how this record completely, I mean, in the 80s, it probably even still was somewhat of an expectation for if they're making this kind of music, ostensibly pursuing some level of pop success. Even then, like it feels like it's breaking, album rules and expectations of what a band should do, because it starts with Age of Consent and you're like, this is so fun, this is incredible, like I'm on drugs listening to this song, and then it immediately completely drags it down. It's just like the wrong sequencing move. Like no one does this anymore,
which I love when albums do that. I feel like for some reason Bob Mould does that with all of his records. I feel like his second track should always be the first track, but I think like true heads need to make it through that first track. And I feel like Late Bloomer would be maybe we wouldn't. We probably honestly wouldn't. But I feel like we'd be a more successful band if we didn't use that as our metric, because I feel like we tend to put a song that's the first song that, in my mind, when we're sequencing it, we try and have something that feels like it's almost like a thesis of the whole record.
Yeah.
And so it's not always like your banger. Like probably our track 2 on the new Late Bloomer record. Look at me promoting my new record. Like I feel like that should have been track 1. But I feel like you need to kind of like get the vibe set to what everything on the record will be. So it's a song like Self-Control. And we did it on the record before that, where it's like you need to sit in it for a second. But it's, I mean, we're talking about the reverse with New Order. But I feel like they still kind of do it, and it's like, oh, you thought that that's what this record was. So they do it the opposite way. Yeah. But I think it's funny when people kind of put a little bit harder of a song as like the first track, or just kind of fuck with people in a way. And I feel like that's what they're doing, but in a reverse way of everything I'm saying.
Well, yeah, and there's definitely the formula has developed for a lot of bands to be, it's like great, strong, single potential kind of opening song. And then the next one is like that, but like more definitely the single.
Yeah.
Is kind of the move. And then like track 3 is where they put the slow song.
Which is something I rail against all the time on the show, where I'm just like, every band's like does the same sequencing of great opener, and then you bring it up another notch, and then you do the cool down for track 3. And I'm like, I wish more bands would resist that urge to be like, here's the cool down slow song at track 3, and be like, I don't know. I like that they put the slow song, the slowest song on the record is track 2 on here. And that's a wild move. But yeah, play with sequencing. Like, don't just follow the same like Rob from High Fidelity rules of making a playlist, for a mixtape for your album. Play around with structure, mess around with things. Dylan, I think we were talking about closing tracks, and you were like, you were mad that you were talking about how you get mad when the closing track is like not anything. It's like not even like a full song or anything like that. I'm like that with the intro track too, where it's like you just made some like feedback as like track 1. Like that's not even like a song. It's nothing. It's not, you didn't set a mood or anything. You're just like feedback track 1. Then the song starts in track 2.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just kind of fun to kind of like I think so much nowadays, not really with this record, people want to just be like hit with that thing at the beginning of it. Even just like if you're like 20 seconds into a song, you're like, what am I listening to? But I think it's silly because the main point overall is like when you look at like how all the lengths of all these songs, they're breaking all of those kind of pop formula things where it's like these aren't short songs, and like so much good like dance music, or I guess this wasn't fully like dance stuff, but it's in that category. But it's like this first track being 5 minutes and 15 seconds, and then 5/8/6, the track 4 being 7 minutes and 31 seconds. Like not really like pop formula stuff. But when you even look at like Flock of Seagulls, they're kind of big hits and stuff. Like those are songs that are kind of built on one riff and then just kind of keep playing the riff. So there's so many times where things do become hits and they still break the formula. So we aren't even remembering the rules correctly. Like there's never been rules, but we say, hey, we just point to some like Buddy Hollyism or something, and it's like every song needs to be 2.5, minutes. Yeah. And it's like, no, a lot of the best music is not that. Like, Atomic Bomb, that one, I'll come up with the artist's name, but there's so many tracks that are just like 10 minutes of like a loop, and you're like, this is the best song I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, like even Blue Monday, which is not on the LP, but it was on like the cassette and CD versions at the time. Like that was like, I think it still is like one of the best selling 12-inch singles in all of UK history or something like that. And even if you listen to that song now, the way it builds is just so not how a pop song is typically like written. Like just that kind of like glitchy synth line leading into like then the drumming coming. It's like they structure that song incredibly. Yeah. And it's a massive hit. So that's proof right there that you don't have to like follow a rule book on how to write a song or put out a record. So
do you think the song, I mean, this album has been remembered well, like it doesn't really need people's help, but do you think that if Blue Monday, and in some capacities it was, but if it was like officially on this album, and because on streaming it's not, unless you're going into the extra tracks and things, which I don't think it was, do you think this album will be remembered more fondly if it was like an official track on the record?
I do. I think it would make the album like, because New Order is the type of band where they have a bunch of albums where you're like, that's the best one, or that's the best. There's actual competition between what the best New Order records are. I think if they had actually put Blue Monday on the official, LP version of the record, it might have turned into like, that's the one to listen to. That is the New Order record to listen to. Instead, they were like, make it a single only, and you could point to like 3 to be like, you should listen to these records, but like it's very hard to be like, this is the New Order record to listen to. So I bet if Blue Monday was on it, this record would be just the one that stands out far more.
Yeah, everyone would pick it. It's because it's like with Low Life, I feel like I can't usually remember a bunch of songs on that, but Love Vigilantes is like such a good song.
Yeah.
And like kind of dancey new wave songs about going to war. Like I don't feel like we tend to get that. I love when people go against kind of the what they should be singing about in that type of song, which is a hard thing to do because I feel like it's like when you put a certain instrument on there, you want to talk about, I don't know, doing drugs or something, whatever it is. But they do have like an interesting thing where they're not always going with the type of what you would assume, they're singing about. I don't think they do it as much on this record, but Love Vigilantes has like always been one that I'm like, if I could get a band to cover that song, like I love that song so much, but it's not on this album.
Yeah. I'm personally glad that this record doesn't have Blue Monday, because I feel like it would overshadow this record, which is saying something when it has Age of Consent and it has The Village. Like it has plenty of, but I guess like without having Blue Monday on here, you do have to sit with everything else that's on here. You don't get to have that automatic cop out of like, well, that's the one with Blue Monday, so you gotta listen to that one. Like everyone's gonna hear Blue Monday. Like that is a song that truly is a single. It really is just a song that, which I mean, talking about breaking formula, like the number one song on New Order's, Spotify is Blue Monday. It is 7.5 minutes long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, that song is just a mini, album itself almost. Like it's just one big song that stands on its own and doesn't need anything else. And and then it was, more or less included. It is kind of one of those songs that it's kind of a de facto track on this song because of how it was released on tape and CD with including that song. But if you go by like a purist definition of what this album is, and which is the version that you're going to find now when you go look for it on streaming, I like that it's not on there. I like that you got to pick your favorite from this record, from this batch. You don't get the automatic, vote for the song everybody loves, because everybody loves that one.
I read multiple like reviews and like pieces from around the same time period, and almost every single review or brought up the fact that Blue Monday is not on the record and how people were disappointed in it. Like they were like, I want it in. I wanted it in an album because I listen to albums. I don't usually listen to singles that much. So I want it as part of the sequencing of an album. You could throw it at the end as a bonus track, but I want to be able to listen to it in the context of an entire record. And it was recorded with the album, I believe. I think it was part of the same session, so they recorded this record. So I get it. I
mean, you can listen to the singles collection though.
Yeah. But I don't typically listen to singles collections, so that's the other thing. But like New Order loved their singles, and it had shitloads of like non-album singles too. So they perfected that. The Brits love their non-album singles, especially during the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I guess especially with the song Blue Monday, like when it actually is designed to be like a club hit and it achieves that, then it was able to kind of have that life that, any of the songs wouldn't. So I respect it ultimately that they didn't give people the easy kind of thing, because it would just be like, oh, that album has Blue Monday and Age of Consent. Like and it's like they have so many other better songs, so it kind of makes you have to like dig a little bit more. And I think that if you're trying to get that OG single, it's pretty expensive, but also even overall, like I remember with working in posters and stuff, trying to get early New Order posters was like pretty hard. Like it, just as much of like a big band that they were able to become from, around the death of Ian Curtis, like it still was like really small at that point, like the whole factory record scene. And it's just like impossible to kind of get that stuff. So I don't know. Yeah, to make people kind of dig for it a little bit more is nice. I mean, I feel like if I make people dig for things harder, they just won't listen to my band. So I respect it that they were able to stick with that.
Yeah, it helps that they had the launching off point from Joy Division. I mean, the reason why they had to launch into their own thing was not anything in the band who actually wanted to happen, but it helped that there was like an expectation of them doing something going forward. And so like, yeah, New Order just like bearing something, it's going to get found pretty easy. Like people were wanting to listen to New Order and hear what they did. And I also read a lot around this record that it was like when this record came out, people were like, what are they doing? Like these synthesizers and this music that's like dance music, like this is not the mopey like goth rock that we had before. Like this is not punk. But then there was also that whole, well, isn't doing the not punk thing actually punk? Like that weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like that's also like the kind of this is good, but also using that argument with things is I feel like what Republicans do with like, they're like,
yeah.
I think the most punk thing you could do now is vote for Ted Cruz or something. It's like I don't think that's how, the most punk thing you can do is actually ski. And I'm like, I don't know where that became a political thing, but it's just those kind of thing. You're like, I think it's really punk to like Linkin Park, and it's like, I think it's just not. Like everything doesn't have to be punk, which is a thing that I've slowly learned too late in my life. And it's kind of like, there's a funny thing though that when I go back to listen to Joy Division, I feel like I'm like, I don't want to listen to New Order demos is what it feels like now. Like I'm so firmly a New Order fan that I feel like I'm like, I don't want to hear somebody figure it out, and it's a completely different thing. And I'm mostly joking, but sometimes it's kind of like they perfected it so well on, so I'm just like, unfortunately, like I wish we had a story of, what Ian Curtis would have become. But I also wonder if they would have just kind of made the same moves, because the scene was already just moving into that. And it's not like Joy Division they weren't like a 82 hardcore band. Like they were already like, really having these things. And I think like with bigger budgets, they would have made the same decisions. If anything, then maybe they would have went more like a Nick Cave or something, or something like that. But like, I still think that their music, so much of what New Order does was already and still there by Joy Division. They're not incredibly far away. So it is funny when people even pick and choose too much, where it's just like, it really just feels like it's like the demo album or the very first record. They're not so easy for me to like pick between, but I know that I'm usually choosing New Order these days.
Thought that never changes remains a stupid lie. It's never been quite the same. No hearing or breathing, no movement, no color, just silence. The rise and fall of shame, search that shall remain. We asked you what you'd seen. You said you didn't.
I mean, yeah, New Order for me, it's in the ways that they're similar. It's like, well, they have the things I like about Joy Division, but they also have these other things that I like more than Joy Division. And they have a different kind of bad singer that I like more.
Yeah.
Well, Ian also, I've always felt like Ian Curtis was doing more of a voice too. Like he was, especially with like Love Will Tear Us Apart. Like that song, he was fully doing a voice on that song. So yeah, I do wonder what you're right. I do think you're right though. They would have probably continued in this direction anyway, because that's what the scene kind of turned into as it went anyway. Like
everything just kind of went electronic. If you were kind of like pushing the boundaries out of, like if you look at like, Public Image Limited and stuff like that, all of that stuff just went so electronic because I mean, it's kind of like back to the whole like discovering electro thing. So many punks were just like doing that. So much of music at the time was just like, they were kind of doing the, well, maybe it is more punk to have a keyboard, like they were kind of like having that thing. But I think like so much interesting stuff, like the intersection between like, where how like electro music eventually just became, a lot of it just became, like hip hop, and so many explorations during that time, like trading back and forth between punk and what became rap and all that stuff. Really just informed its way, but like that post-disco kind of scene. And also I think there's so much like playing in there too with like, if you're part of like a subversive scene, being part of punk, but also being part of like dance music was really subverting like these masculine norms. And so it's, just kind of all that to say, like we have already said, like it would have just went this kind of way, because it's like, even growing up, it's like, we like growing up as a kid, it was like, no, I don't listen to disco, but this was like the mid 90s. What did I give a shit about disco, but like kind of realizing like, no, disco rocks, but yeah, it's just like so much music just kind of went into that. Even like Madonna, like early Madonna, like cites, post-punk stuff. So it wouldn't have been that crazy if Ian Curtis had lived, if we would have just morphed into the same band anyways.
Yeah. And I mean, the UK scene has always kind of moved in blocks. Like everybody goes at the same time. It's just everybody turned into punk, started punk bands at the same time. They all went to the same Ramones concert and were like, we're going to do punk. And then everyone declared punk dead the next year, and everyone started doing post-punk. And other than like, your UK hardcore kind of purists of people trying to be like, no, we must stay here. And how much of that was just conservative, reactionary, like mentality too, in the UK. But yeah, the UK's music scenes have always, everyone has copied each other like kind of immediately. So it's a foregone conclusion that New Order, those musicians would buy synthesizers and start playing with them.
We like the stories of kind of like the what could have been, like it's like, I don't know, even I did an episode on Sublime, and it's like, you assume like he would have kind of like seen some of the lyrics that he had written and kind of gone a different way, because he's kind of started doing that in the same way that Beastie Boys, really like kind of really highly regretted that early period of them. So, it's not to say that there's anything that Ian Curtis should have regretted. But it's like, I feel like people already would have seen like, oh, we can do this differently, so in any sort of way, it just would have made complete sense. But yeah, we just like those kind of things. Like, what would Nirvana be now? And it's like, I don't know, he'd be doing coffee shop albums,
Yeah. I mean, he did an Unplugged record, and like it was one of the best selling things they ever did. And so like, they probably would have tried a couple more of those, or he would have gone like, I think he would have gone like in a Neil Young route and like maybe done some weird stuff like Neil does occasionally, but also like some pretty straightforward, singer songwriter type stuff. Yeah. Also, you never know. He maybe would have turned in. I mean, he maybe would turn into a huge asshole or like a right winger or something. You never know with like people like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it with him, and that's usually where I think he would have been a contrarian, but I usually catch myself because it's sort of like he actually did have thoughts on like, he did have like formulated ideas on like who he was, and it wasn't completely contrarian. Because I know I think a lot of times like he would be a huge libertarian, and he would be so annoying. He would be like, he'd be a Johnny Rotten figure, I think, but he could also be a Bill Maher type, where it's like technically he's on your team if you really line it all up, but he's not, because he's just a fucking asshole. Like that could have been, not to speak ill of the dead, which I guess I'm doing, but so I don't have any idea of like what Ian Curtis would have been, and I think that also makes him like such a like Buddy Holly figure. Like it's just like we don't know, because there's not really anything to tell us that he was. So you can basically just be any type of person ever, and just be like, nah, Ian Curtis would have been my best friend. We would have lived together, and we would have went and voted together. Like it's just like you don't know. He didn't leave, I don't think, enough breadcrumbs about the type of person he would be today at like 70 years old or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? They could have broken up a year later,
Yeah.
or do like Peter Hook, like leave New Order after a certain point, It just anything could have happened in any direction. So yeah. Those what ifs are always.
And we do know what New Order is now, so
Right.
that is somewhat of an indication of where
Yeah,
Joy Division would have gone. I feel like they very easily could have had a mid 2000s kind of return to basics record like New Order has, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna do a record with more guitars on it than we've ever done, and no one likes it, even though we're doing the thing that
and then you just have to
always
tour
wanted us to do,
huge festivals or something, and all that stuff. Like, I think the hardest. I mean, it's what in the Butthole Surfers chapter, I feel like I quote this a lot in Our Band Could Be Your Life, where they just talk about like the best thing you can do is just keep being a band. Like if which it hasn't really worked out that well for me, but but I think about that statement a lot because I feel like people will stop and start projects, and I mean, kind of like it's not hitting enough in my local scene, and I didn't get this show, but then it's like it feels like once people break up a month later, they would have been offered that big show, and so. And also, if you're just going to kind of start another band with your friends, then what's the difference? Like it's like most of the people in New Order outside of Peter Hook, they've stuck together. So why not keep doing New Order, even though he's done like, Bad Lieutenant and stuff like that. But like for the most part, for some reason, they just keep coming back to it. And we've already had all the story written of what New Order was and is and so we are able to look back and put on the Joy Division t-shirt and assume what could have been.
I think people really get hung up on that iconography of that Unknown Pleasures album cover. Like that's just it's a meme at this point. Like the actual album cover is like a meme now, that's just like, oh, I don't know what that is. I just saw I think my wife said she had somebody come into her work one day wearing the Unknown Pleasures like Wavelength shirt, and she's like, oh, I like your shirt. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just cool. Like he just liked the design and bought it. Like
they had it at Target.
Yeah, right. If you have it at Target, I mean, you might as well.
It does look cool.
It is cool looking.
Yeah, like the Misfits. Like I've seen so many like TikTok videos of people just wearing Misfit shirts, and it's like, I'm like, or like you'll see like rappers wearing like death metal t-shirts, and they're like, well, they're cool looking shirts. So
yeah,
what are you gonna do about it? Like even like when you look at like Def Leppard shirts, if you can get it like a vintage Def Leppard shirt, like it's so cool looking. And so I don't begrudge anyone that just doesn't know who the fuck Def Leppard is and just like wants to wear a cool shirt with something blowing up on it. Like it makes complete sense that it's like this kind of like icon of things. Like I almost I know it does happen, but I wonder if that person was like just lying to your wife, like they just want to be
right,
but they probably don't
ask
me. I don't know.
It's
highly possible because you can get it right next to a Mickey Mouse shirt, and like for some reason they sell like Cheech and Chong shirts, that which is kind of like, why would it even be relevant to me, even though it was really highly as a kid? Like I loved Cheech and Chong, but it's sort of like, if you're 13 years old in 2024, what is Cheech and Chong to you?
Right, because like even the weed aspect of it doesn't even hit the same in 2024 as it did then.
Yeah, because weed is just there's a store for that.
Yeah,
it comes in a little pod, it's
yeah.
Or you eat it. It's candy.
Yeah.
Well, you say that as a California resident. We can't be so lucky.
I drive. I literally I drive by at least. There's two dispensaries on my 15-minute drive to work.
It's kind of funny. We really haven't talked too much about the individual like songs on the record, but this is one of those records that I don't really, when I listen to it, I don't think of it as like the songs you just kind of like pluck out. Like it's one of those records that I listen to from front to back, and I'm like, I love everything on here. Like even the slow song that I typically don't like that kind of thing, what they're doing in that song is so like fun. And even kind of reminds me a little bit of what like Talking Heads does sometimes. Like I kept getting like Take Me to the River, like their cover of that song vibe every time that I re-listened to that song.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting that you were considering talking about the Talking Heads record of Speaking in Tongues. And so like after I listened to this record, I went and listened to that Talking Heads record, and I was like, they're kind of two sides of a similar coin. I don't know if it's the exact same thing. I don't know the metaphor I'm trying to go with here, but like
It's an exchange rate
yeah.
difference between the bands.
I listened to that record and I'm like, okay, this is another band that had a sound on their first like 2 records and then like went running in another direction almost entirely. Like they went in like a, you know, Afrobeats direction or whatever, you know, for a while.
Got weirder and more successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's funny about when people go, no, every song needs to be 3 minutes. And I'm like, there is the whole history of the 1980s where they will prove you wrong. Like the weirder Talking Heads got, the more popular they got. And I would say it's not even arguably. I feel like most people would probably agree. Like, I feel like they just overall got better. Like, Stop Making Sense is better because of that. Like, and there's so much exploration that was happening in the 80s in terms of trying to kind of synthesize, like, you know, even like where you're talking about like Graceland, just any of those kind of things where it was like they were recording in the Caribbeans, and I guess you could call it appropriation. But all of that's like so much interesting music was being synthesized into white people culture. Like, and, you know, so like it made white people music better because of that. You know, like it was like Stop Making Sense and, you know, like Remain in Light and stuff were like such better albums because of that. But it also, that I think that also ties into everything we're talking about, because people were like, nah, dance music does rule. There's not a huge gulf, but also if you had the money, you were then kind of doing the same thing. You were just like going to the Caribbean and recording with like Gary Newman and stuff like that. So many people were just like doing that at that point. It's just kind of like what side of the coin you were kind of doing it on, exploring. And so I feel like we're like weirdly in like a conservative time frame musically now. And so there's like as conservative as time was at that point in the 80s with like the Reagan administration, there was some, and this could be really bad hindsight, but I feel like when we're able to pick these things out, people were really pushing themselves musically in ways that I don't feel like people are really doing now in terms of popular music. And I don't even say that as someone who like dislikes pop music. I just think that it's like those explorations were allowed still in things that were played on the radio.
Yeah, I think there also were a shitload of 80s ballads that were just like boring as hell, that were like, oh, that's the top 10 for like the entire 4-year span there. So like, yeah, I think this is the kind of stuff that like we have decided is like critically valid and like far more creatively interesting than like, oh, this Richard Marx song that's #1 for a really long time. Oh, Kenny Loggins is #1 now for a really long, you know, it's like,
that's a good point. Yeah, it's like Richard Marx isn't so much of a conversation now. So sort of like that retelling. So I'm kind of like doing the retelling of like what history wasn't in the 80s, but it's sort of like now when people talk about the 80s, I feel like when we're going critically, we're not talking about Richard Marx. No. You know, we're not talking about What About Me that came out in 1984.
Well, I think there's a difference in that music that is like this, that is subversive, that is trying to draw from a lot of different places, a lot of different cultures, particularly marginalized ones. Like I think that it could kind of break through in a way and get a level of critical attention that would lead to a level of commercial success that is maybe not how things work now. It seems to take a lot longer for someone who's doing the critical darling kind of work now to get to the point where they're living off of it, you know? I mean, that's just probably just the stratification of, you know, of music and how many people are making music now. Yeah, contributes to that. But and also just there's fewer houses, there's fewer publications, there's fewer opportunities for that exposure. But
yeah, I mean, true. I mean, it's like it's hard because sometimes when I think about it, like people will go like, oh, well, you know, we used to make so much more music or money when we sold records like and toured in the 80s. But it's like, well, you also had to pay long distance phone bills and, you know, so but But truthfully, that might have been the case now, but it's like it feels like there's no publications. There's no like middle class anything. We're all just either like, we're all lower class or like very rich, like so even in music now, there doesn't feel like there would be a middle class, which, I feel like New Order would probably at some point would have been the upper middle of how successful, like very successful or doing great. But, but you don't have to be. There's no in between with so many things. It's either like pitchfork and then down to someone's zine. Like there's not. There used to be like so many like middle class everything. Like like so it's it's an interesting thing with like where it's easier to make music and put it up, but no one has any inkling that they'll like make a living from it. But also I wonder. I don't know. It gets to be like such a weird thought experiment where I try not to get too stuck in like the time that we live in, but I also that's kind of impossible since I currently live in
it. Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, it's very interesting. Dylan and I were actually doing a little discourse talk last night online because apparently all of the people that Dylan follows have the worst takes on the internet. And so he always sends them to me, and I'm like, "Where are you reading this?" But
I don't know how I wound up. It's doing PR. It's doing your own PR, is what it is. It puts you in the circle of everyone who is like, I guess, the gatekeepers of indie music now. And I'm just like, I don't agree with any of you guys.
Yeah, I have a lot of
people
times
I have to impress.
I feel like I have a lot of times where I'm just like, I see an argument. And never anything like if it's something really important, like don't assume I'm thinking about that. But like it's always like this album is the best thing, and then someone will argue, and then it's like I don't agree with any of you. Like it's always something innocuous, like it doesn't even need to be discussed. But I just look at it like I don't agree with anybody here. Like like I don't really need this Gaslight Anthem take today.
Oh yeah. I saw that take.
I was like I made the I think you should leave joke, but did people actually engage with that sincerely? I haven't checked.
Yeah, I don't. Well, we don't have to cut that part out. I don't want to specifically because I think it's like pointless to what we're talking about. Yeah. So I guess edit note if you want to. If you don't want to, I don't feel like I said anything that I don't care to back up. But but it just may be easier because like it's now I can also address it directly as we're 1 hour and 48 minutes in. But so this will all get cut out, I guess. But it's like I feel like a lot of these takes are like you're looking at such a small lens of music that you think Yeah. Like it's like, and I also don't even know if you genuinely feel this way because I think you're just trying to like get people to interact with you. Which, it's like, I understand how Twitter works, but it's like I, and then I don't want to engage with it because I'm like, do you actually feel this way? Or are you just trying to like get this kind of people to be mad at you? And I was just like, but to call, it's like, I don't even want to be online defending Gaslight Anthem because I don't even really care about them that much, but it's like, but that's not true at all. Like if you look at like the history of music, that this would be fascist music. I don't know, but I guess all of that is edited out now.
Yeah, we'll edit all that out. It's so like off topic and like very specific to today.
Yeah,
that's for Dylan and I's Patreon where we're like, did you see this story?
Yeah. What? Yeah, but yeah, the discourse that we were talking about last night is pretty relevant to this record about like singles and album sequencing, which we've kind of like talked a lot about this record in this context. So it's really funny to me that we're talking about this record because it's like this is case in point of like everything that we were talking about on our own time of just like you guys are thinking about this too hard in like the wrong ways. Like I am happy to think long and talk about album sequencing. I think it's fun. But the minute it's like this is the rule, it must be this way, I'm like, I'm out. I'm just like, this record is like poppy song, downer, weird, super slow song, poppy song, 8 minutes long, figuring out how a synthesizer works.
Yeah.
Like in live time on the record. Like that's riveting sequencing.
Yeah.
And that would not make it today.
Yeah, I feel like all it tells me when people have those takes are that they genuinely probably only listen to guitar-based music.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like if you have any even guitar music that is like progressive rock, I'm like this stuff was pretty popular. You know, so I think like having any hard fast rules with anything is kind of like, you know, just because it worked for Rivers Cuomo doesn't mean that that should also be your manifesto in life. Like that's great. It worked for him to have a spreadsheet that tells you how to write a song, you know, in a certain way. And that does work for so much like pop artistry. And it's the reason why people put certain production techniques, and people did that little picking method and the strumming method in like 90 songs because people want to hear these specific things once they hit. But I think overall, as like the history of music, you need these moments of people pushing like this New Order record is, because it won't push like conversations forward. And that's more important to me than like this song is good because it's 2 minutes. You know, like even if I end up being the loser with my streaming numbers because of it, you know, like I think it's more interesting. And I'm not even someone that I feel like I'm making like adventurous music. So, you know, but it's just like I think it's interesting when people are pushing it past a thing that we might be comfortable with, because having these kind of, it feels conservative is what I'm saying. Like it feels like if we make a rule and we stick with it, then that's kind of what got us into trouble in quotes in 82. And it was cool when it first started, and like Youth Crew was cool when it first started, and like, you know, 86, 87, or I guess 88 at its peak. But when it starts getting codified, that's when I am like checked out. Like even probably when it feels like it's like you have to make dance music like this, that's when it feels like it's not as fun. That's not the reason it's good, is the main point. Like it's good because of the exploration, and sometimes it isn't good, but that's fun too. You know, so I don't know. I feel like they were shooting for something.
Yeah, and it like changed their sound going forward and like made them a separate identity from Joy Division's sound. So shooting for this and being like really into Italian disco while you're writing a record, like it gave us one of the coolest pieces of art of like the post-punk or whatever you want to call this genre of music scene. Like it's New Order it feels very timeless. And it's funny to say it feels timeless because every sound on this record is like, oh, this just defined what all 80s records sounded like for the next, 3 or 4 years. But there's still the songwriting is so good that's what makes it timeless. Not so much like that's an 80s synth.
Mm-hmm.
And just an enduring piece of art that people find over and over again. Like, there's a new generation of people who find New Order like all the time. And I feel like if it was just this like flash in the pan sort of thing, it was just like hype at the moment, that's the more conservative, like this is what we're doing right now. And like, yeah, cool, this record's like really popular right now, but in like 5 years, is anybody going to care about that record? And if there's like 20 records that sound exactly the same,
Yeah, like I always use this one TSOL record as like a reference point. And there's this TSOL record called Change Today. Like to me, it feels like their Embrace, which is a funny thing to make a equivalency to. But it's like Embrace is such an interesting record because of like I feel like it's a transitional record. Like I love transitional records and things, and I feel like this New Order record is that. It just so happened that it also became a blueprint and like something that a lot of kind of different sounds reference. But it could have easily not been that. Like it could have been. A lot of times those transitional records end up being viewed as a misstep, like that TSOL record. Like people generally for a long time Change Today. And I think still to this day, like it's not TSOL Reunion doesn't play that stuff because a lot of those people aren't in the band, but I think that's their best record. And because I feel like it's taken a swing, like it's like pulling in stuff from the Damned even more than they were doing. And it's kind of viewed as like a wart. And I love those records in people's discography because after that they fully go hard rock. But there's this one kind of record in their thing where they were doing this like probably also pulling in the Doors in some non-annoying way. But I feel like in a weird way this New Order record is that. Like it's them taking a swing at a thing And yes, the culture went that way and culture was going that way, but that doesn't mean that they would have been good at it. But they just happened to also be good at it, and so but it could have been like, damn, well, maybe we should go back to more, to our roots, like be a Joy Division ripoff at that point. But it worked for them.
Yeah. Instead of TSOL, where they were like, they turned into like a hair band at one point, where it was just like,
yeah,
how did you get here? I mean,
like after that record, they started being a hard rock band.
Yeah. They went the SSD route where they're like, or Gangrene, like everybody just doing thrash.
Everyone did that.
Records.
But that a lot of those bands, that in between thing, before it kind of became another thing, is such an interesting time point. And I think we kind of had that in 1983 with so many types of music where people were like, punk is dead. Like I think it took them a little bit longer, but even like, Blasters, I think they kind of knew, but like X, all these bands kind of had the same kind of thing. And like, what are we going to change into? And, it's like, then you get things a couple years later, like, people just go full country, but those in-betweens or something are always really interesting. And this worked for New Order, so we continue seeing them on the path, but it could have not.
Right. It could have flopped. I mean, they say that like the first night of the tour they went on right after the record came out, the audience was quiet and just stared at them. Like they were just like confused by what New Order was doing with these songs. And it could have flopped, but I guess, I don't know, maybe that audience, just the songs were just that good, I think is what it was.
Yeah, I mean, but that's like a funny thing where it's like, where people are like, well, it's almost like a comedian. It's like, if you are funny but no one knows you, you're not going to get as many laughs. But if people know you, then it sort of becomes this like endless cycle kind of back and forth. Like, and then you see all these like, it happens with bands too, where it's like the music's not good, but they're known as being good. Yeah. So it's like when people come to a comedy show and they're like, that guy's funny, it's an easier battle than if you're like a band that no one knows. And, or just like, it hasn't been said that this is great. But I think what's an interesting point in like New Order's time frame is like, this is not dark enough to be Bauhaus and all that stuff like that, or like Clan of Zyma and all of those kind of bands. So it is this weird kind of like in between where it's not as friendly as like what Flock of Seagulls and stuff became, or where that kind of, it's this weird in between. So that's where I say like it could have not worked, because it kind of bridges the gap between a Depeche Mode and a Clan of Zyma, where I think they can all love New Order, but they're not exactly the same thing, and they need that connecting tissue, which is New Order. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been going for almost 2 hours now.
A long time.
I guess, do you have any like final thoughts on the record you want to get up? Or anything you are dying to say that we've managed to avoid saying for this entire time?
I think I might have said it all with this, because I mean, it's just like I think like it's trying to like, I'm kind of definitely going into like spinning out territory, where I'm like, I try and really appreciate an album for what it was at the time, and like and it's like, I don't really know, so I'm just bloviating, but like it's like, if you can kind of like get in the headspace of why someone made this record at that time, then I feel like you can hopefully strip away the context of what it is as a societal thing. And then, with this case, I already liked it. But even on records, when on Spinning Out, that I'm like, I don't know if I like it. But it's like, can I get in the headspace of what this person was doing and their influences, and try and appreciate it without all the like marketing that came around it? And I think that's really hard when we're looking at like, you get to a point where you're like, I don't know why I'm thinking of like the band Bare Naked Ladies, but you're trying to strip a band away from like their hit, and you're trying to like appreciate an album outside. Like, what is this album out? Like, what is this New Order album without Age of Consent? Like, it's like, is it such a different thing that people aren't giving it? Because I feel like people will go buy a record because of the first song, which is just an age old thing. But, it's like, do we actually know the album that we're thinking of, that we know? And try and recontextualize it as one piece.
Yeah, Dylan and I are all about like the context of when music was recorded and released, because that's why we do the section at the top where we talk about other records that came out around the same time, or stuff that you are considering. Because to me, it's like the record wasn't made in a vacuum. So you should at least look and see what was going on around at the time. So, and how do you get here to this record? Is this record completely original in its time, or is this record just like, oh, this is just a natural occurrence of what was happening at the time? Is it a copycat? You know, there's so many different ways you could go with an album. So, yeah.
And the music that's on the record can't be informed by what came after it. So it's,
right.
Yeah, it's helpful to try to take away any of the, like, all of the bands that copy New Order. Like, you could take half of this record and have like a super hype EP that's on Jangle Pop Hub, you know, right now. But then you don't have like the other half of the record that is not pop music, that is not something that you're going to ever really reach for on its own. But you hear it on this record, and it's really kind of the best part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, like when it dips into I think a band we didn't even talk about, like Tangerine Dream, okay, it feels like Michael Mann soundtrack music. Like It's like when it dips more into that, that's when it's like the good stuff for the record. Like it's like it feels like it could just, and I know a lot of these songs have been used for movies, but I'm like, they need to use some of these other tracks that are just like, you know, LA in the 80s or whatever kind of big city kind of neon lights and kind of thing. It can almost be any city if you put the right filter on it. And that's like the best parts of this record, you know, like I think like people don't reach for that because they think of Age of Consent. They think of Blue Monday, but there's come downs, those kind of like, you already did the job and you're dealing with the other side of your feelings kind of parts of the movie Heat, you know, or like those slow parts of the movie Heat, which there are many, even though John Russell won't admit to it. Like, you know, those are the parts where the movies really shine. But I think that's not generally what we remember when we think of that movie or these albums and stuff, because we're thinking about the heist scene in Heat. We're thinking of when the guns were blazing, but you got to think about the scene where like Val Kilmer's in his house, like trying to get his wife to like not leave him, or if I'm remembering any of that correctly. But that's like what that part of the record is. And it's
don't tell John, but I've never seen Heat.
It's, you know, if we have to edit this out, I don't know, but it's a tedious movie that I think pays off because of it, but I think people remember it as much a high octane movie than it really is. And that's my only problem with it, because Lethal Weapon never really lets up as a movie. But I don't think I mean, for different reasons, like it doesn't get remembered in the same way that Heat has become like a t-shirt. It's its own Joy Division thing, you know.
Now I'm going to look for Heat t-shirts.
They're pretty cool. Like I've seen people wearing them. There's good bootlegs of Heat. Like it'll make you want to watch the movie. But just remember, there are like an hour long part in the movie after like the heist, or parts where you will fall asleep. Yeah. So
I just want to have a Heat shirt that people can be like, I like your shirt, man, and then be like,
yes.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Yeah, please do.
I just thought it looked cool.
Yeah.
I think that's even funnier to do with a movie than it is to do with like a band t-shirt.
It's a movie?
Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us. It's been 4 years since we had you on, almost.
Yeah.
But thank you for having us on your show too over the years, and just this has just really been a really fun conversation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate both of you for, I don't know, just like keep doing it. It's very hard to do a podcast, as you know, but like I don't know what else to say. Just thank you.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.